Coming up on UGTV, Board of Commission meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight's commission meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Walters.
Here.
Philbrook. Here. Bynum. Here. Wells. Townsend. Here. McKinnon. McGill. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Alvey.
Here. This evening, the invocation is being given by Ken Netling of Faith Lutheran Church. Please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Gracious God, we gather in your name and pray your Spirit upon us as we go about the business of our city. Surround us with your wisdom and your strength and all that we need. Especially, Lord, we lift up our first responders, and especially tonight as they receive awards. We give thanks for them and all who serve our city, and especially our elected leaders and all those who call Kansas City, Kansas home. For this we always pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Netling. I'd like to recognize dignitaries in the audience, Mr. Bob Mylan from the Board of Public Utilities, Mr. Jeff Bryant from the Board of Public Utilities, and Mrs. Mary Gonzalez. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And I will also recognize Judge Morris Ryan. I'd ask the clerk, are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
There are no revisions to the agenda, Mayor. However, I would like to bring to the attention on the agenda, the very last page needs to be flipped on the copies that were sent out for the public.
Thank you. So our first order of business is the mayor's agenda. Item number 1 is the presentation of the Police Department Awards, and recognize Chief Ziegler.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, County Administrator. Appreciate the opportunity to give out some good recognition to some officers tonight. The list is kind of short for this quarter, but we want to give out the Lancaster Melton Award to 2 officers, Officer Sutton and Officer Elaine Moore. That's kind of a big deal for us. We had a new program that kicked off this year. It was the Summer Cadet Work Program. First time the police department did it. We got rid of our old cadet program. We brought in 18 students, or 18 kids from 16 to 18 years old from the various high schools, and we decided to put them to work. So these 2 officers took the idea or the concept that we had for the program. The kids started in June. They spent countless hours preparing what the curriculum was going to be, what we were going to do. They got donations from the community for food and whatnot. And one of the important things that they did, an important piece of the program, was connecting with some of our businesses. So they visited these businesses and set it up where the cadets could go, tour the businesses, find out what it takes to get entry-level positions, and then those businesses hosted lunch for the kids. So the 18 kids go through, they toured businesses, they did community cleanups on the weekend, they painted an elderly woman's house in our community that needed some brush cleaned out, a fresh coat of paint. They did that for They also learn skills like how to sew, how to fix a car, how to cook, some life skills that maybe they don't get otherwise. And the program was a great success for us, great success. The kids had a lot of positive feedback, and I can sit up here and tell you what great work they did, but it's probably best that I share with you 2 letters that I got. The first letter I want to read, it's from one of the participants' mother, and she sent it to Officer Moore. It says, Officer Moore, Jenny said she is having a great time working as a summer intern. She loves everything about it. Picking up trash under the highway was disgusting, but she toughed it out to help get the job done. She said it makes her feel good to do community work and help others. I just wanted you to know she goes to bed excited about going to work the next day. How lucky to have a job that makes her feel that way. Based on Jenny's feedback, it sounds like you are doing a great job. Thank you. The next letter is from one of the tours they took over at the over at the county courthouse. And this one reads, a couple of weeks ago, the juvenile court received a visit from the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department cadet class and the facilitators of the program. These young people were witness to a couple of probation violation hearings. They were very respectful and appropriate despite the difficult stories that they were told during the hearings. Some of the cadets knew the juveniles involved in the hearings. The cadets were engaged and vocally proud of their individual goals, whether it was a career in law enforcement or meteorology. The facilitators have done a spectacular job of teaching and showing by example how adherence to simple social norms can improve the community's perception of youth. I hope that the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department Cadet Program continues. They are welcome to return to the juvenile court as visitors and peer support anytime. Signed, Judge Delia York. So overall, the program was phenomenal. They're already working on next year's program. We're looking at improvements. And tonight, we felt like we wanted to recognize them with the Brad Lancaster and Dave Melton Award. So that's the award they're receiving tonight. Thank you very much, Mayor.
So just to let you know what a great program you had, I was at a meeting today where there was a bunch of high school kids, some of them that had participated in this program. And they were very excited about it. They thought it was wonderful, wanted to continue. And I understand that there's an additional program that's going to be worked with for some of the kids that want to stay involved, to go places. And what's the name of that program? Yes, the Explorers Program. Thank you very much for your work, and I want you to know that those students are very excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to take just a moment, first of all, to recognize Judge Nichols, who I did not see in the audience before. But also, I would like to present on behalf of the Historical Society of Wyandotte County and the museum a copy of the most recent book, A Historical Overview of Wyandotte County and Its Historic Sites, Volume 2. And this is a gift from Lauren Taylor, who has voluminous in his knowledge of Wyandotte County history. It supplements prior publications, the Consolidated Ethnic History of Wyandotte County, the Historic Communities of Wyandotte County, and Historical Overview of Wyandotte County and Its Historic Sites, Volume 1. So this is a 500-page supplement. It's been 5 years in its development, and I just want to take this opportunity to present a copy to each of the commissioners and publicly give our thanks to Lauren Taylor for his dedication to recording the story of Wyandotte County and its citizens in all places at all times. So thank you, Lauren, and thanks to all those who helped make this possible. Yeah. But you cannot read it during the meeting. Okay. Next, we have the designation of voting delegates for the League of Kansas Municipalities Annual Conference. I'll entertain a motion to designate the 4 as listed.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
The vote is 7-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 3 is a resolution reappointing Maurice Ryan as Administrative Judge of the Municipal Court. Any members of the commission have any comments or questions?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
The vote is 7-0. That motion carries.
Thank you, Judge. That takes us to our consent agenda. Does any member of the commission, staff, or citizen in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on tonight's consent agenda? You would need to step forward at this time and state your name and city of residency for the record and ask that that item be set aside. If an item is not set aside, all items on the consent agenda will be voted on by one vote.
Move approval of all items on consent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
The vote is 7-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to the administrator's agenda. We have 2 items. The first is a presentation and recognition by the Board of Public Utilities. I'd ask Administrator Bach to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'd like to recognize the General Manager of the Board of Public Utilities, Don Gray, who is going to come forward and introduce the item that they have or the items that they have this evening. As our close relationship with the Board of Public Utilities, Don and I determined it would be good to come forward and kind of show off some of the awards they received and also where they are with some of their benchmarking. So with that, I will turn this over to Don Gray.
Thank you, Doug. First of all, I want to thank the mayor and the commissioners and Doug Bach for allowing us to be on the agenda this evening. And I do appreciate the mayor introducing our board members that are present. I would also, if I could, just take a minute, introduce a few of our staff that are here. We have Lori Austin, our CFO. We have, at this time, we have Pat Morrill, who's director of our electrical engineering department. We will also have Dave Melhoff here for, is Dave here yet? Anyway, what this is, a couple months ago, we presented our 5th benchmarking review at one of our board meetings. And we do the benchmarking studies about once every 2 years. After the benchmarking study was presented to our board by our consultant, our board president, Jeff Bryant, said we ought to share the information with the mayor and the commissioners and some of the UG staff. I thought instead of sending copies of the executive benchmark summary to the UG, why not see if everyone would be interested in hearing the presentation? And so I called Mr. Bach, and he seemed fine with it. So he placed us on tonight's agenda, and we appreciate that very much. The purpose of our benchmarking is always to see how our costs of our operation compare with other electric and water utilities, both regionally and nationally. Also, these reviews help us identify areas we are performing well and other areas where we need to improve. Overall, we feel we are doing a good job in controlling our costs, but unless we take a formal review, how do we really know how well we're doing? Since this is our 5th report, this also provides trending of our costs. The individual we hired to perform our benchmarking review is Jerry McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie is a senior associate with the MGT Consulting Group. and has been responsible for managing hundreds of successful engagements in both the municipal and private sector electric utilities for over 30 years. Jerry has developed numerous cost of service studies and internal cost allocation models. He has conducted a variety of utility accounting research and analysis studies on subjects such as the impact of mandates on electric rates and trends in rate design. He has worked with utilities such as Omaha Public Power, Colorado Springs, Georgia Power, Madison Gas and Electric, Santee Cooper, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. For over 25 years, Mr. McKenzie has worked with all sizes of municipal utilities to create Excel-based electric rate forecasting models. These models are specifically designed with the objective to simplify the rate design so that is easily understood by boards, councils, and commissioners. Over 75 municipal utilities have benefited from his service. At this time, I would call on Jerry McKenzie to present our benchmarking study. Jerry.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to present the results of the benchmark review. I just want to give a little bit of a background of myself as well. I began my career, is there a way to advance the slides? I began my career working for an investor-owned utility. Spent 10 years working in the investor-owned utility world, and served as a consultant for both the IOUs and the municipal utilities for over 30 years. I also have served since 1989 as the instructor for public utility accounting, one of the most exciting topics on the planet, right, for the American Public Power Association. And I have had the privilege of instructing over 3,000 attendees through that conference. I've worked with the BPU since the mid-90s. I've also worked with the UG before it was the UG. In fact, worked with Wyandotte County as well as the city of Kansas City, Kansas. So I'm familiar with the area as well. One of the things that I've learned over my career, having worked for investor-owned utilities, for profit utilities, as well as for municipal utilities like the BPU, is the significant difference between the way that they approach their jobs. And what I mean by that is you can look at and kind of summarize by looking at the mission statements of the different organizations. An investor-owned utility is focused almost exclusively on a return to its investors, profit margins, right? Municipal utilities, you're not going to see that same kind of focus. The focus for municipal utilities is to try to provide safe and reliable power services at a low cost. So how many of you would invest in a stock for a company that says we're not trying to make any money, right? But it's very important to grasp that difference. Totally different way that the municipal utilities approach the work versus an investor-owned utility. As a customer, I actually prefer the municipal utility approach. I would prefer to be served by a municipal utility. And I'll explain various benefits as we go through this. But to kind of, and I'll come full circle with this comment, I've done a number of these studies, and I can honestly tell you that, in my opinion, the BPU does more with less than anybody else that I know. Less resources means you have to manage those resources very, very efficiently. And I think the results of this study will kind of quantify that a little bit better. As Don mentioned earlier, this is the 5th update of the benchmark review. To do a benchmark study once every 10 years, you've got 9 years of potentially bad management decisions, right? So it is important to stay on top of this. So this is the 5th one. We've done them about every 2 or 3 years, in some cases 1 year, depending upon what circumstances are happening in the environment. The report that we actually generate has a lot of statistical details in it, and I'm not going to cover those. I'm going to get only into the highlights of this. But when we do the benchmark review, we're benchmarking the costs of the BPU versus other municipal utilities, as well as doing comparisons to investor-owned utilities. And at the same time, we're also looking at trends. In some cases, utility costs are going up across the board. In other cases, they're not, depending on different areas of the country. What we did in this study, we compared results from 2015, and APPA is some of the source documents that we relied upon. APPA is the American Public Power Association, has thousands of member utilities, municipally owned, city-owned utilities across the country. And they publish statistical, financial, and operating information, and we use that database within our study. They also publish what they call a contribution by public power report, because as I'm sure you all well know, a lot of times municipal utilities are compared to the private sector. Well, what are the differences between the two in terms of the support provided to the community and to the city? Some specifics about who we compared to in this study, and I'll get into that when we get into some of the specific details, but it included cities like Cedar Falls, McPherson, Independence, Springfield, Longmont, Colorado, Loveland, Stillwater, Lincoln, North Little Rock. There were literally hundreds of different municipal utilities that provide this information. And so we know it's on a consistent basis. So we are comparing apples to apples. Anytime you do benchmark studies, you got to be careful that you're doing apples and apples comparisons. On the water side, we compared to Water District 1, Water 1 in Johnson County. And then we also included things like Independence, Missouri Power and Light, as well as specific information associated with Colorado Springs utilities. The first benchmark that I want to show you is the electric power supply. And I know some of you have a closer relationship with the BPU than others, more of a history. But this is a very critical factor because it's basically the cost to generate and obtain the electricity or the power. Okay, so this is very critical. Normally, it represents about 70% of a utility's costs associated with generating or obtaining the electric power. The rest of the cost associated with transmitting it out to the various customers and distributing it to the various customers. And I know that the graph may be a little bit hard to read, but you guys are on the left-hand side. And then the next column is the APPA national medium. And then they break it down in the APPA study by size of utilities. So we also compared to those municipal utilities that have 50 to 100,000 customers. We also did comparisons based on geographic areas because the costs on the coasts, if you will, are considerably different than the costs in the central part of the country. We compared to two different regions because the BPU is close to the Southwest region and the North Central Plains region as well. And then we also did specific comparisons to Independence. And the last graph on the far right, most or a lot of municipal utilities do not have the ability to generate their own electricity. They're buying all of their power from other utilities, okay? So if you notice, they're paying on average 7.2 cents, and The BPU is 4.54. It pays to have generation. If you don't have generation capabilities, in effect, you're kind of a hostage to the marketplace. So it's good to have the diversity that comes with being able to generate at least part of your own electricity. Under the notes and highlights, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but obviously the BPU is considerably less, 29% less than the APPA national median. That's a key statistic. And that included 137 different municipal utilities. And then if you look at the next grouping, the 50 to 100,000 customers, that was 17 utilities, municipal utilities within this region. 41 utilities within the North Central region, 19 utilities in the Southwest. And in all of those cases, you can see that the BPU is significantly lower than the other comparative statistics. And the key bullet, as I've highlighted there, the next to last one, is managing power supply is critical because it represents a major component of the overall cost of providing electricity services. So as a conclusion, the BPU is doing an excellent job of controlling these costs in a very difficult environment, I would point out, because of legislation that has been passed with regards to green power and those types of things. It's very difficult to keep costs down and at the same time keep up with all of the regulatory requirements associated that are not only just coming from Washington, but from other parts of the country as well. So this is a very critical statistic. The second component is what is referred to as transmission and distribution costs. This covers the cost once the power is generated. How much does it cost to get it from the power plants or from the connection point out to the individual customers that are being served? Okay? And again, the BPU is on the left-hand side. We've got Independence and Colorado Springs there. And we are showing 2015 as well as 2014 in this particular case. The reason we don't show the APPA median and other APPA information is they do not publish that data within their purview. One of the things I would want to point out is a lot of times the cost associated with transmitting and distributing power is dependent upon the weather conditions. If you live in an area where the weather is mild most of the time, the weather conditions are pretty conducive to low costs. But if you're in an area like you guys are in, where we have rather extremes, whether you love them or hate them, we have them, right? With regards to our weather, that can certainly have an impact on this, as well as the customer density can affect this as well. BPU is less than Independence, has approximately the same number of customers, a little bit higher than Colorado Springs, but Colorado Springs does have some economies of scale in that they're about 3 times the size of the BPU. So the conclusion that we would reach is that you guys are doing a very good job of controlling those costs compared to other utilities in the same geographic region under the same type of weather conditions. The next category deals with electric customer service activities and costs. So if you look at big picture, we've generated the power, we've transmitted it and distributed it out to our customers, but we also have to generate bills, we have to communicate with the customers, we have to collect the costs associated with it, those types of activities. The BPU, again, on the far left in the blue, APPA national median is shown in the orange color, Independence and Colorado Springs beside that. The BPU is less, obviously, than the national median, as well as Independence and Colorado Springs, and considerably less. The BPU also has realized some savings, I think, from the implementation of the new metering program. Obviously, there's capital investment associated with that, so the recovery period, it takes a while in some cases to see the results of that, but I think you guys are seeing that right now. So the conclusion, obviously, is it's a superb job. Costs are much lower than the national and area averages. And also, if you look at 2014 versus 2015, you can see that the trend is that the costs are going lower for you guys. They're going lower for some utilities, but not at that scale. Now, obviously, that'll plateau at some point, but it's obviously a very good sign and a good investment on you guys' part with the metering program. All right, this is electric administrative and general. This really represents any organization has to have a finance department, a payroll department, a purchasing, accounts payable, an IT department, et cetera, et cetera. So we have all these support costs. And the electric administrative and general costs are benchmarked by comparing what is the total cost based on the number of employees within the organization. That's the traditional benchmark. And APPA, obviously, again, does not publish this data, but we did compare you guys to Independence as well as Colorado Springs, and also to the investor-owned utilities. And I think this is interesting. You're less, obviously, than Independence and Colorado Springs, but you're also less than Kansas City Power and Light, as well as Westar Wichita, and they break out Westar into two components, Westar Wichita and Westar Topeka. So to be lower or comparable to the investor-owned utilities who have that large economies of scale is a pretty good accomplishment. So you're doing an excellent job of controlling the A&G costs as well. Okay, if we package this all together, what's the total of the electric operation and maintenance costs associated with, based on a kilowatt hour sold basis? And again, the BPU's on the left, the APPA national average is in orange, and the different size customers in the center, as well as Independence and Colorado Springs. This is, again, a critical benchmark because it ties to what are referred to as the controllable costs. There's not much you can control on the capital side of things. Once you commit to a program, those costs, it's kind of outside your control. So this is really an indicator of the cost. How are you doing with the costs that you can influence? And that really impact rates immediately with customers. So if you look at this, the BPU is less than the APPA national median, as well as similar sized municipal utilities at a national level. And less than Independence, a little bit higher than Colorado Springs, but that would be to be expected because of the economies of scale. So again, everything that we've looked at indicates that the BPU on the electric side is doing an excellent job of controlling the O&M costs. At the end of the day, how do customers view a utility? Based on their pocketbook, right? Rates. Rates seems to be what people focus on. When I teach the APPA class, there are what we call the two R's that are important to customers. What are those? Rates and reliability, okay? People want the power when they turn on the lights, you know. We don't really care about how it gets there. We just want to make sure we have it when we want it. But the other focus for customers is on rates. And this benchmark compares APPA to the national median. In this case, there were 17 utilities included in that geographic area, same customer class. And the BPU is less than the APPA median, as well as less than the first quartile. And the first quartile basically represents the top 25%, if you will, of the people that were in the survey. So this is a very, very good indication. And I know that there probably have been rate increases since this was done, but it's a moving target. The other utilities have had rate increases as well. So I'm sure if we were to do this today, you're going to find the same kind of statistic. For residential and industrial customers, I think it's interesting too, BPU is less than the APPA median for residential and industrial customers. Most municipal utilities may be low on one side, but they're higher on the other side. You guys are lower in both conditions. The conclusion, obviously a good job of keeping rates as low as possible. Rising costs of environmental mandates, as I mentioned earlier, this has all occurred during a period of time unprecedented in the electric utility world with regards to environmental legislation. Right? So this is something to be very much proud of, in my opinion. And at the same time, contributed or maintained the contributions to the Kansas City, Kansas area, not only with the services at a low cost, but also to contribute money back to the unified government. So all of this points to the fact that the BPU has done an excellent job and it has also contributed back to the Kansas City, Kansas community beyond just providing good service at a low cost, safe and reliable power, which was the mission statement. What about on the water side? Okay. There's usually only one major benchmark that people look at on the water side, and that is what is the cost per 1,000 gallons pumped? And in this particular case, again, we only have one comparison, but that's comparing to Water One in Johnson County. The BPU is $4.50. The Water District 1 is $4.03. And then if you look at the various components of that, operating costs, your operating costs are a little bit higher. Depreciation is lower. Interconnect expenses are pretty much comparable. And then payment in lieu of tax, you notice that Water One does not have a payment in lieu of tax. That's the money that's contributed back to the UG. So if you subtract that 50 cents out of the first comparison, you can see that in effect, your rates are very comparable to what Water One is charging. Okay? In fact, they're just slightly lower. There's really, as I mentioned earlier, there's kind of a lack of consistency in reporting on the water side, so we don't have a lot of statistical comparisons that we can compare to. If you think about, well, why are some of those components different? Why do you have higher operating costs but lower depreciation costs? It's tied into the age of the system. Your water system is a little bit older, obviously, than their system is. So they're going to have higher depreciation costs associated with their newer system, but you guys are going to have higher maintenance costs associated with maintaining your older system. So again, these numbers not only make sense from an accounting standpoint, but they also point to the fact that you guys are managing the assets that you have in an efficient manner. Let's see, go ahead. Water operating costs by activity. Again, we broke it down into different components, and I'm sure that you guys are all thrilled to talk about these pieces, but the operating costs on the far left-hand side, but what are the components of that? Production costs, the costs in effect to pump the water and to get it to the point where it can be distributed. So very much like the electric side. Then you can see the T&D costs, the customer service costs, and the A&G costs. The only thing I wanted to point out here is notice that your production costs are lower, but your T&D costs are higher. Again, it comes back to the fact that you have an older system, so you're going to have a little bit more inefficiencies on the T&D side of things, but your production system is obviously making up that difference. So conclusion, based on the per 1,000 gallons pumped, the BPU is doing a really good job, comparable rates to what Water District 1 has. So overall conclusion with regards to the benchmarking review, doing a great job of managing the assets that its customers own. If you think about who owns an investor-owned utilities assets, That would be people who've invested in buying the stock of those companies, right? Well, who really owns the assets of the BPU? Technically, it's the customers. And that's why your mission statement is different than theirs, because you're not out to make a profit. You're out to try to manage those assets in an efficient way, a safe and reliable way. And based on my statistical analysis, and this is 1 year, but we've seen similar results the last 4 times that we've done this. So it's not a one-off. This has been happening for a number of years. And in my opinion, I would be very proud of the BPU if I were you. Obviously, the BPU also remains fully committed to the Kansas City community. The contributions made over $47 million. I'll hit on that in just a little bit. But if you look at it from a big picture perspective, based on the fact that you guys have limited resources, the BPU, and I'm honest about this, in my entire career, and I've been in this business a long time, I've not seen anyone consistently do more with less than the BPU. This is a busy slide, and I apologize for that, but we also did comparisons of the amount of money that was contributed back to the municipal government, to the UG in this particular case. And you can see that as a percent of revenue, it's about 16%, and you can see what the various components of that are. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that. But we compared that to 176 public power systems, and the median was about a third of that. And you can see the various numbers there. We compare it to the North Central as well as to those of similar size. Again, if I wish I lived in a community that had a municipal utility like the BPU, because in effect, I'm getting my rates, as we just talked about, at comparable level, but there's money that's being contributed back from the BPU to the UG that's helping the residents of the UG with lower tax dollars. That's how that really translates. The last slide, we also did comparisons, same thing. What if the BPU, though, were owned by an investor-owned utility? What do investor-owned utilities normally contribute back to the communities? And this is based off of tax information filed through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And you can see that on average, they're around 4.2, 4.5%. So again, everything that I've seen shows that BPU is managing the assets in a very, very admirable way, as well as keeping the focus clearly on the community that it's supporting. And with that, I will entertain any questions or comments that you might have.
Yes, Commissioner Walters.
Do you benchmark reliability?
We don't. That gets into the engineering side of things. I know that the APPA does publish some of the things that are based on average outage times and things like that. We did not look at that in this. This was a financial review.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you for coming forward with this. And again, I think that sometimes we take for granted what the Board of Public Utilities does for our community. And just to, again, reiterate that the costs are being managed and kept as low as possible. And at the same time, we are, the BPU, the ratepayer through the BPU, returns 12% of the total bill in the form of the pilot back to unified government and supports necessary, vital services to our community. And so we're grateful. We are lucky to have this utility. And unfortunately, I would say that over the decades, the Board of Public Utilities has earned a reputation for, political shenanigans. And I would suggest that that is not the case for the current board and has not been the case for a long time. There was a period in history when, in fact, there were forces which tried to run the utility into the ground in order to sell it so that an individual might have received a finder's fee. And we're talking 50, 60 years ago, but it took a long time, I think, for the Board of Public Utilities to recover from that. And I would just want to thank Don Gray, General Manager, and his staff. The number of awards that the Board of Public Utility has earned in the past decade is astounding. And once again, the Board of Public Utilities has won the Stevie Award, which is the Business of the Year. And so it's like the Oscars for businesses. And so congratulations to the Board of Public Utilities, to the management and the board of the BPU. Thank you, Mr. McKenzie.
Certainly.
You got
Thank
more.
you, Mayor. You kind of stole my thunder a little bit. I will say that you served on our board very honorably for about roughly 8 years. And along with our other board members that are here this evening, you made sure that all of us as staff, we worked closely with the board and made sure we communicated with you any time we wanted to spend anything for whatever reason. And you overseen our budget and made sure that we were responsible and accountable, and it's paid off. The last item I wanted to present, Mayor, you had mentioned just a little bit. This summer, the Board of Public Utilities was presented with the Gold Stevie Award for Company of the Year, Large Utility category, at the 16th Annual American Business Awards ceremony that was conducted in New York City. At this time, I'll call on our Chief Communications Officer, David Melhoff. He's the one that submitted our application, and I'll have him kind of explain what this is about. David?
Thank you, Don. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'll kind of run through this a little bit. I came to the utility in 2008, December 2008, and we were doing a lot of digging out and just trying to, every day was a fire to fight. And I decided about in 2015 to start entering some awards. Not to get awards for the utility, not to get awards for my department, but really to get some third-party recognition of doing things right and doing good things. And I want to credit our general manager and our board of directors. Three of them are here tonight, Mr. Milan, Mr. Bryant, Ms. Gonzalez, and other board members who have really given me a lot of freedom to do what I need to do to communicate with the public, with our employees, and just really believe in the importance of communications and marketing. BPU, since 2015, no municipal utility in the United States has received as many national awards for communications and community service as our Board of Public Utilities. In fact, no utility in the United States has received as many awards, including investor-owns. We've won 8 national awards for community affairs and marketing communications activities. 2015, we won American Public Power Association award, the top award for social media for our energy efficiency video series. I submitted something to American Business Awards. We had a Silver Stevie for Best Corporate Social Responsibility Programs. 2016, American Public Power, the National Community Service Award. American Business Awards Gold Stevie for the best website in the nation. American Public Power Association Award the same year for the #1 newsletter in the country with the BPU Connection. 2017, we won an award of excellence for the Power of Community, our video from the American Public Power Association. 2018, the Charge Awards in Reykjavik, Iceland. Couldn't get that one in the travel budget, but we were named one of the world's best energy brands. We were in the top 20 energy brands in the nation with people like Tesla and some of these other organizations. There was only 2 utilities, municipal utilities, actually 3, to be up there with us, and was ourselves, Austin, Texas, and Sacramento. But the biggest award we received recently was the American Business Award Gold Stevie Company of the Year Large Utility category. They had 3,700 nominations for the American Business Awards, and the mayor was right. These are considered by the New York Post as the business world's own Oscars. They're very hard to get. It's very complicated to apply for them. They have a judges of 270 judges. Some of the other winners this last year include Marriott, American Express, U.S. Army, just to name a few. A lot of Fortune 500 companies, and our little utility. And I'm very proud of that fact. We were named Good Company of the Year. We were named Company of the Year, Best Overall Company of the Year in the large utility category, and that was going against investor-owns and others. What the judges do is they have a ranking system, and they have a judges panel of, for our area, they had 20 judges, and they rank everything, and you have to have 10s across the board to get a Gold Stevie. If you've got 7s and 8s, no good. Here's how we were ranked and how we were ranked on, and I'll give you a couple of bit of the judges categories. We were ranked on the following items. That was environmental responsibility, environmental stewardship. They recognized that the fact that BPU is the greenest utility in the nation at 45% renewable energy and continues to climb. We were recognized for our Empower Education program, the only one of its kind at all 3 school districts in Kansas City, Kansas, and that continues to grow. We were recognized for our community donations, whether it be our charity golf tournament, our youth program, community sponsorships, United Way campaign, and so forth. Volunteerism with our Employees Foundation, civic leadership, Energy Solar Farm, and so forth. A lot of great awards. But I want to, I want to give you just some of the judges' comments. And these judges have to apply to be a judge. And these judges are CEOs of marketing, communications, and branding from various organizations. The gentleman who heads up marketing for Marriott says, dynamic and well-written application with detailed content. Congratulations on all you received. This came from Tesla. The company seems to have been investing back in its community with the development of many other items such as online bill pay, customer satisfaction surveys to see how they're doing. They're not afraid to think outside the box. They don't have big budgets, so they seem to do the best with most. Excellent nominations, comprehensive. BPO should be the poster child for doing well by doing good. So I'd like to show what we got. It looks like an Oscar. This is the Gold Stevie on marble. 2018 Company of the Year, Large Utilities, our BPU. Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Just to wrap up, I want to thank the cooperation and hard work of all of our employees to make this at all possible, and also our board for providing the resources that we needed to get a lot of these things accomplished. And I'm very proud to stand here and say that I'm very proud of our utility. And thank you.
Thank you, Don. All right, our last item is a SOAR update. I'll turn it over to Melissa Sieben and her team.
All right, so we were hoping we would be able to sit at the table, but we're not able to do that, so my scrambling didn't work tonight. What we will be doing is there's a series of us that will be coming up here to do different slides to talk about what we've been doing in the different areas throughout the SOAR update. But one of the first things I want to do tonight is recognize a couple people in the audience. We have Sasha Hahn and Mike Haugen, got it right. They are from the city of Topeka. which is also a What Works City under the Bloomberg Initiative. They are close partners with us in our fight against blight in their community as well as ours. We work together, we collaborate together. I bet we probably talk to each other a couple times, 3-4 times a quarter, just because we have things going on that cross collaborate, and we just spent some time tonight beforehand. These folks are with their Neighborhood Relations Center, and so they wanted to see what our update was all about. So I want to welcome them. Also tonight in the room, not presenting with us, is Jenna Hillier, who is our new Delinquent Revenues Coordinator for the Unified Government. You may recognize her. She was our first coordinator as a VISTA with the Unified Government, and we're very happy to have her back. All right, without further ado, let's see what we've been doing with SOAR. This year, of course, is the year of the vacants and the neighborhood deep dive, which will be a theme throughout. Wanted to give you some updates here on the screen. These are our 5-year goals that we have for SOAR. Just recently, we updated the My Sidewalk page that has our SOAR goals on it and the data tracking. We are currently at 5,900 and change, almost 6,000 of our property maintenance touches that we want to make in our 5 years. So we are way ahead on that, which is awesome. We are up in our land bank counts, which we told you would happen as we get more aggressive with our delinquent properties. So that is currently up over where we started, about 500. And then we are down in our dangerous buildings or demolitions, as you may refer to them, to 135. And Aaron Downey's here as well tonight to talk a little more about that. And we will also talk about our tax sale, but we are tracking lower in the number of eligible properties for the tax sale, which is good. But of course, as we've gotten more aggressive, our churn is bigger in that. So wanted to just update you on those numbers. Again, SOAR hits 4 of the 6 areas of the Commission's strategic plan, and I will be working on a new strategic plan over the course of the next while here again with the Commission, but just wanted to highlight the areas that we are working in. Now we're going to turn into our vacant housing section of the presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Greg Talkin to talk about our vacancy registry success.
Good evening. Vacancy is one of our biggest problems that we've been trying to solve with SOAR. It's one of our biggest issues that's detrimental to our community. Brings a lot of issues associated with that, crime, blight, all of those items that are undesirable in the neighborhood. Last year, the governing body considered an ordinance and adopted an ordinance for a vacant property registration. This is one of the incremental ways that we're looking at trying to improve the vacancy rate, trying to decrease it. We did this through a third party. We didn't quite have the inside capabilities of doing this and managing this. We're doing this with a third-party vendor called ProChamps. So far, they've registered 421 properties as of the 31st of August. For the unified government, that's generated approximately $42,000 in revenue. We get half of the fees associated with each registration. That helps cover the cost of the dedicated half of a full-time staff member to help administer and oversee the program. We are currently working with ProChamps. This was known when we went into the agreement with them. They are very good at the foreclosure and default market. We had no access to very good records in that area. They have excelled at that. They do that with a lot of other communities. But we are piloting with them the private side of the vacant registry. And what I mean by the private side, it's those that aren't in mortgage foreclosure. They're not in default. They're the ones that meet the definition that we put in our ordinance, which is basically they are vacant for a year and they haven't had utilities for 60 days. And we have records that we go back and research and to develop that. And so they're developing an entire separate database for this. And we are doing some pilot projects with them right now on that side. An example of that is Rosedale Ridge, which has been a problem property. It was a little bit problematic with them. They weren't expecting to get 6, 7 buildings on the same parcel. They didn't know how to handle that, so we worked through that with them. So we're hoping to have something live by the end of this year to be full scale. At that point, we're working with DOTS and the Knowledge Office. They're developing data that we can do a data dump, basically, eventually, to pro-champs to get all of them notified that they need to register. We feel like this is an innovative management tool that the governing body approved for us to use, and we are expecting big results from this over time. Next up, I believe, what's up?
So in transition, we just want to be able to show you sort of what the entry portal looks like off of our website. If you go to the NRC page, Neighborhood Resource Center, you will see a link to the pro-champs registry. What you can do is you can come in here and if you are a property owner, you can register here in the middle. But if you have a problem property, as we get the private side set up on the left, you'll see that red arrow. That'll let you report a problem property. And then what pro-champs will do is gather all the necessary information, turn it over to our staff to go ahead and do the work if there's violations and things of that nature. So that's great. The other side is if you're a homeowner and you want to see if something's registered or a business here in town, you can look to confirm if that's already been registered as a vacant property. So probably would start on the right, see if it's there. If it's not, then go to the left and go ahead and submit for that to be researched. You can do that right now, but it will be much more vibrant resource once the work that Judd and NRC are doing to stand that up here in the next couple of months. And this, I'm going to turn over to Judd because we have been working on a process map of what happens to vacants. And if Commissioner McKiernan was here tonight, he'd get all excited. So I just want to acknowledge that he's not here. Go ahead, Judd.
All right, so this is a list of things that we could do besides the vacancy registry. It's like what can the unified government do to address vacancy? So we have our data that we're validating that they are vacant. We send out a code inspector to verify that they're vacant. And if they are vacant, we add them to the vacancy registry, check if they're 3 years tax delinquent, and we can add them to a tax sale. If they are tax delinquent, but not 3 years, but they have been abandoned for 1 year, and we get that from our BPU shutoff data, we can place them in a tax sale. Are there code violations on the house? And then vacant properties hurt the value of all the properties surrounding it. So to counteract that, we would like to send the code inspector out for the whole block because this house has a high probability to sell. So if we could raise the value of the block, the house could sell for an increased price. And if it sells for an increased price, that's a better comp for the appraiser. And a higher comp from the appraiser means increased appraisal values, and that leads to increased tax revenue. And then notify realtors of the potential sales. So we have pro-champ send in the mail. We have the code violations, them getting mail from that, and then realtors are contacting them to sell their property. And then we can notify the neighborhood group just to keep an eye on the property.
The next section that we're going to do tonight is our neighborhood deep dive section. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Logan, our coordinator, to tell you what we've been doing in the Park Drive neighborhood.
So the Neighborhood Deep Dive refers to the Park Drive / NRSA project, NRSA. And some of you have already seen some of this information, but we wanted to bring it back. It's all related to SOAR. The Park Drive neighborhood project has been moving forward in 2018. We've held 6 subcommittee meetings, an economic subcommittee, public service and education committee, and a housing subcommittee. And those have all 3 of those have met twice now. We have also, the appraisers have re-inspected all of the properties in the Park Drive neighborhood. Code enforcement created a booklet of information to send out to all residents in this neighborhood, and it includes information all about code enforcement, rental inspections, all sorts of things like that, and how codes issues are important and what property owners need to do to maintain their properties. We've also had all the initial inspections of rental properties in this area have been completed. That's 61 exterior inspections, and they've also completed 9 interior inspections. So one of our big things with this project this year has been the walking event and neighborhood picnic. So we held this walking event in July. The mission was to educate and speak with residents, invite them to the picnic, and gather data. So we walked with over 80 volunteers. We knocked on over 1,300 doors, and we spoke with 303 residents. While we were walking, we passed out this brochure. It's an infographic with information on how to be a good neighbor, as well as the Park Drive project, where you can learn more and how you can help. And just so you know, we've also created a SOAR version of this brochure that we're handing out at events. So while we were walking, we were collecting data. We used a GIS collector app. We worked with GIS to create this app, and the picture you see on the right is the map of the neighborhood. It's color-coded so that we can walk in blocks of groups. And the black you see there is what was completed. As we were walking, we were marking them completed, and they turned black. So we could see in real time what we were accomplishing as we went. So while we were walking, we were collecting data, just observational things we noticed, and we asked strategic questions like, are there people over 65 in the home, so that we could connect them with aging resources. We asked if there were children under 6 in the home, so we could connect them with the No Lead KCK program. And we also tried to see if there were any obvious codes violations, so we can connect those people with resources. And we've also, we are moving forward on sending all of those properties noticed a letter with just some information about code violations and why it's important to fix those things. We did also want to note that this wasn't a perfect process. Not everyone used the app correctly. There was a bit of a learning curve, but we still got a lot of information out of it. And this is the information we collected. So we have a lot more than this. We have addresses and parcel IDs and all of that, but this is just the totals. So we stopped at 927 homes, although that might be a little bit more than that because that doesn't include multiple units like apartments. We spoke with 33% of those homeowners, so we felt pretty good about that. We noticed 67 vacant homes, just coming back to that vacancy registry and how important that is. 60 commercial properties, 91 residents spoke Spanish. We did have Spanish translators with us, and we used those with 91 residents, so that's good to know. And 12 residents actually spoke a language other than Spanish. 166 homes with children under 18, and 128 of those probably under 6, so we know to target them for the No Lead KCK. And 179 code violations, and we separated those out by structural, environmental, and both. We just wanted to give a shout out to all of our community partners. They have been absolutely amazing. We work with a big group of partners on this project. So those are all listed there. Wyandotte Countyans Against Crime, Mission Adelante, CABA, all those great people. We couldn't do it without them. So then I mentioned before that we followed this with a picnic. Again, it was July. It was very hot, but we had a lot of people out there telling people about everything that the UG provides, as well as some of our community partners. So the mission was to engage the community and educate the residents on the resources and services and to have fun. We had a lot of free food, music, entertainment, and information for everyone. We had 21 UG departments and 9 community partners participate. And we did have one really good success story, some numbers we can show you. HEDC, the Hispanic Economic Development Corporation, provides a lot of computer literacy training, business startup, things like that. And they were actually able to get some residents to sign up for their trainings while they were there. They are just recently breaking into the KCK market, and so it was really exciting to know that we had a hand in having people attend these trainings. So they had 21 people attending their computer literacy training, the same number for their office administration, and then a few people for professional and business startup training. Over 1,000 hours of training is what they're providing for 2018, so that was exciting. A few other things. We did get the 18th Street Corridor Plan funded for next year. We are going to be presenting at the Wyandotte Countyans Against Crime meeting this month to further engage residents in this area with their neighborhood group. And then we also wanted to point out that Clifton Park, which is in this area, was chosen for green infrastructure projects. And they actually received a Health Foundation grant in partnership with Casey Moe and Mark in order to fund community engagement for these projects to get input on those. And is Justice here? Okay, Justice is not here at the moment, but we wanted to point out that there is a new route starting next year for the 18th Street. So you can't see the map super well, but this is really exciting to get people to businesses and all over. It goes all the way from Roland Park to Quindaro. The 18th Street bus route, we were really excited to get through this project as well.
All right, we'll quickly roll through. We've been also doing a lot of community engagement events related to SOAR because we know that letting folks know what we're up to is really important in the community. So we did start earlier this year with an Earth Day cleanup in association with CABA. And I think Logan and I and Kristen made sure we worked out our backs really good that day, picking up little things everywhere. So just some examples of a lot of great community participation, beautifying our appearance on that day. Additionally, the summer La Placita, which is also in the Central Avenue corridor, invited us to be there as often as we could with a booth about SOAR. So you can see our setup there. And additionally, we also, in the same area, worked with Wyandotte County Against Crime on their Night Out Against Crime. We're there with information as well. We tried to figure out a way to make this more engaging for children. So Logan has developed another infographic where you find the code violation. We looked all over the internet trying to find a way to engage in this area. Let me tell you, there's not a lot out there, so this may be the first, folks, but this is the way that we ask people to find out about code violations for kids, and then they got candy. And on the back, we explain exactly what it is that is the violation and why it's a violation. Another thing that we were kind of excited and shocked to get to do was make our own SOAR street sweeper. That's a tongueful. It will be out in the community telling people about improving our appearance and safety. So look for the SOAR street sweeper coming soon. Last one of our initiatives, and I bothered Steve Daly to stay because we've been working with the Fairfax Industrial Association, and they are helping us create our beta version of the industrial infographic, which is basically, instead of the neighborhood one, it's for industrial areas. And we've just rolled this out to them, and they were very impressed. We actually drove around with Fairfax Melissa Clark for an afternoon, kind of trying to understand what an industrial area would be looking for from a perspective of SOAR. And this is what we've generated for them. And we look to be also taking that out to Armourdale and other groups that would have an interest in improving the appearance of their industrial districts. Last thing that I'm going to turn over under the communication, which is also kind of part of a neighborhood deep dive, is one of our new projects. And I'm going to have Shea walk through this slide.
Thank you. So beginning in May, the Economic Development Department began an initiative. Friday mornings, we gathered various departments from the unified government together to do a 30-minute walk through the Strawberry Hill neighborhood. The purpose of these walks were to examine the infrastructure, housing, businesses, and just look at opportunities with our feet on the ground, all together talking at the same time about the possibilities. These walks allowed us to build positive relationships with business owners, with the neighbors and different neighborhood groups, and it's helping us to envision a better block. One of the things that is coming out of the Strawberry Hill neighborhood walks is the Blocktoberfest that'll happen on September 28th, and it's bringing a lot of those partners that we met through our Strawberry Hill walks together to work collaboratively and to temporarily change the infrastructure of 6th Street from Ann to Taromie.
All right. So for our update of our 10,000 count in 5 years, we're like 60% there. The biggest areas is tax sale eligible. That's 2,500. And we have unfit properties to fit at 300. If you want, there is everything SOAR at the My Sidewalk dashboard, how we counted it and all of our progress is at on that link. This is the property maintenance index. We made one of these maps last year, and we made this year, and this is the change in the areas. This map it layers 7 variables like vacant structures, vacant lots, tax sale eligible, unfits, and it gives each one a rank, and we stack all them together to get an index value for each area to get a property maintenance score for each one. The green ones are the ones that increased, and those are around Central Avenue, and those are basically a reduction in tax sale eligible properties and a reduction in unfit properties in those areas. The ones that went down were vacancy and unfit lots. All right.
So next up is going to be a code enforcement update. That'll move you forward.
Good evening. We have, I apologize. So far in 2018, we have had 14,000 cases, and about 4,000 of those were abatement cases. Those are the cases that we're going out and putting the stickers on to take action immediately on. With each one of those cases that we do, there's typically multiple inspections. We do initial inspections, re-inspections. If we have court on it, we have to do a pre-court inspection. On the abatement type cases, we do an initial inspection and an abatement re-inspection. And sometimes on those cases that continue out, you'll have several re-inspections. So taking that into account, so far this year, our inspectors have done almost 31,000 inspections in Kansas City, Kansas. Additionally to that, something's out of whack. On the bottom line there, you see that there's 3,800 multiple violations cases. Part of that relates to the next slide. Push up. Which one? This one. Of those 14,000 cases, 1,400 of those were addressed with an administrative citation. So we've done 1,400 completed administrative citations this year. We've collected $31,000 in fines off those administrative citations, and we have 261,000 more in fines that's been billed out and has not been paid. The unpaid totals will be processed into a special assessment, and then if it's not paid on the taxes, it will be applied to the property taxes as a lien. Same time last year, when we started heavily on this project, we had 523 cases, 19,000 collected, and 65,000 that got sent down for special assessment and for lien. The unpaid fines for, oh, I skipped one, I'm sorry, I apologize. The unpaid fines from this year that were sent down were 230,000. The unpaid fines from 2017 were only 48,000 that were sent down. For the trash and weeds, of the 3,460 14-day abatements we did for trash and weeds, that was from March 1st to August 30th of this year. And in the same period last year, we did 3,691. We had a few less this year, and I believe that's probably because of the turnover that we've had in code enforcement. We've lost a significant
amount of staff this year through resigning and changing positions, a couple retirements. So we're close to where we were last year, but not quite the same spot. So far this year, we've tagged, or not necessarily tagged, we have addressed 2,167 cases for vehicles alone. That may mean the vehicle was placarded for a tag to be towed. It could have been a notice of violation issued against the property if it was sitting someplace that we couldn't get to legally to tag it. It could also mean that there were 6 or 8 or 10 vehicles on that same property that we addressed. These are just the vehicle cases that are outside of the vehicles that were tagged. We had 1,169 at this time last year. And I jumped back a couple of slides real quick to that figure that I said belongs with a different slide, and I screwed that up when I sent that over to Melissa. The number of multiple violations, 3,832, some of those could also have vehicles included in those. If it's a case that maybe has dilapidated structure and other issues going on the property, and there's also vehicles on that property that we can't get to, those vehicles could be included in those properties as well. So I mentioned the incredible turnover that we've had this year. So far this year, we have had 11 open positions in code enforcement. Last year, we had 10, and the year before that, we had like 4. We've been struggling all year to stay on top of it. I think the code staff have done a really good job because they're continuously working. We have 2 inspectors now that are covering multiple districts. We have one of our clerical people who was an inspector, but she's taken one of the clerical positions. She's still covering her position until we can get people hired. We have 2 people that we're working on going through the process of getting hired now. But at this point, we're struggling to get there. We schedule 5 district-wide vehicle enforcement efforts every year. We've done 2 of those so far this year. We're going to try to get the last 3 of those done this year in October, November, December. I'm not sure if we'll be able to make that, but we're going to give it a try. We're going to see what we can get done getting these last few folks hired in and trained and get completely through the rest of the districts.
Hi, I'm Rachel Miskey with the Rental Licensing and Inspection Division. Just a couple of statistics for you all. Every April, we mail out the renewals for all of the licensed rental properties. This year, we mailed out for 7,040 licenses to 3,000 owners. That's for revenue of $648,437. Compared to April of last year, we're up a little bit from there. The delinquent license statements go out the 1st of August for anybody that hasn't paid. They have a grace period until the end of July to get that paid before we start applying penalties. So August 1st, we apply penalties and send one more bill. We sent for 1,888 licenses for 147,149, which is also down a little bit from last year as far as the amount of properties that we're up on the delinquent licenses for this year. One other thing as far as in the future, the Rental Licensing Division has been talking with Section 8 Division of the Housing Authority to work with them on getting a memorandum of understanding going so that we can help them with their inspections. They'll require an inspection from my division to be able to be on the Section 8 program. So we are hopefully in the final stages of getting that taken care of to get that implemented here in the 4th quarter.
Good evening. I'm Erin Downing, the program coordinator for the demolition program. There was a $2 million increase to the demolition budget over a 2-year period. That gave us $1.7 million for the 2018 demo budget. There is a remaining balance of $700,000 that remains in the budget. All other funds have been encumbered. With those funds, we've had the ability to demolish 57 structures. 2 of those are commercial structures. 6 structures were demolished for the parking lot project behind Memorial Hall, and 21 of those were land bank owned. There are currently 120 structures on the demo list, compared to an average of 205 in the previous years. There was 23 structures removed from our current demo list, and that was recommended by the SOAR Demolition Committee. Those were all located within historic landmark or landmark environs. So those have been removed and all been referred to our delinquent real estate department for review to determine if they're tax sale or donation eligible. There's the average cost of a demolition project in 2017 was $15,000. This year it's increased to $22,000. We've also implemented a mandatory requirement for our demolition contractors to only use straw wattles for the erosion control versus the silt fence that was previously used. The straw wattles will decompose over time and flatten, so that will help with the mowing of these lots after grass has been established. They're not required to be removed after the demolition. We plan to evaluate the wattles, the condition of the wattles within 6 months to see how those are holding up.
Oh, sorry. So the quick response trash team is part of the Parks Department. We have responded to 817 14-day abatements so far this year. So those are properties that are either in need of mowing, debris removal, or a combination of both. We've also been called to 93 instances of what's called like the true QRTT, where whatever debris is left at the curb needs to be picked up within 24 hours of being called to it. During our busy season, we average about 14 abatements sent over to us every day. So we are still pretty busy out there.
I am presenting this tonight for Rob Richardson, so pardon me if I read a little more than I would like to. He's at the Strawberry Hill Neighborhood Group meeting for us tonight. So zoning enforcement was something new. We also started under SOAR. We are now sitting at almost 1 full year of having a zoning enforcement officer, again, for the unified government. We have been working on sending notices to all businesses asking for voluntary compliance throughout this last year with signs and landscaping ordinances, and all follow-up continues to be ongoing. We've researched and sent notices to all known short-term rental operators and also are following up. What's interesting here is the numbers that are below. In August through December of last year, we cited 83 businesses or residences for zoning violations, 20 signs in the right-of-way cases, and sent 5 things for DRC inspections. So far this year, we're at 175 zoning violation cases, 43 signs in the right-of-way cases, and 89 DRC inspections. And these are all noticed through a letter of stating a violation, and we work with folks to find a remedy. This is not the only duties of our zoning enforcement officer. They also do re-inspections for us as well. So they have multiple duties, and this is one person. So he's been very busy, and these take a few extra legal hurdles because it is zoning related. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy, our attorney at Awesome with SOAR.
Good evening. Just to give you an update on how we've done with our tax sales, we brought in $3,667,000 or $667 $1,171.51, and that's from this delinquency year. Now, by delinquency year, the delinquency year starts in September for the previous year, so that's what they're referring to as delinquency year. So they start keeping track last September and work their way up. So they include in that the December 2017 sale, the April 2018 sale, and the August 2018 sale that we just had. 2016 tax eligible properties were resolved through this process, and by resolved, that means they either were redeemed, they were put on a payment plan before the tax sale, or they were sold through the tax sale, and if not sold, then they were taken by the UG and then moved to the land bank. So that gets them out of the purgatory that you've heard us talk about before, where if it doesn't sell, it's still just sitting out there with nothing happening to it. We've eliminated that now. We brought in over $1 million with the December 2017 tax sale. We brought in almost $1.4 million with the April 2018 tax sale, and we brought in just under $1.3 million with the August 2018 tax sale. So we're generating lots of revenue for taxes, which is wonderful. We're also dealing with these properties that haven't been dealt with properly in the past. And of all those properties, the land bank has now taken in 48 houses just in this delinquency year through the 3 sales. So again, we're getting these properties out of the purgatory and we're making something useful happen with them.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We're going to talk tonight a little bit about the rehab program, also known as Propertunity Knox. I just want to point out something that was stated earlier by Judd, that we're all familiar with these houses that are anchors and they're bringing our property values and our neighborhood values down. And the main reason we started this program was to reverse that trend. So currently we have 102 houses in the program. We also have 67 contractors that are currently making offers to rehab our properties. As you can see, some of our before and after success stories up there. And then it says Phase 2 now open. We're in the process of opening it up to 80 more new applicants. We just sent those applications out this morning, and we'll be evaluating them and hopefully adding them to the program. Currently, since we started the program early summer last year, we've completely rehabbed 18 houses, or I should say our contractors have. We currently, it says 16, but we actually have 26 that are in the rehab process now, and we have 42 in our inventory that are just kind of sitting there without an offer. That's why we're expanding the program to hopefully get that number down. From a demo side, we've asked for 24 houses to be demoed, and we've had a little bit over half of those already been torn down. And then 75% of the houses that we've transferred technically are potential rehabs, but we are giving our contractors an opportunity to look at those, and we have had some success stories that we'll be sharing with you soon. And this, again, is just a map right now that just kind of shows the area and focus, where we've had some successes, and what we're still working on with the program. I believe I turn it back over to Greg.
Okay, a little bit more about demolition. We have enhanced the process or changed the process associated with demo. We've renamed the demo list basically as a dangerous buildings. We presented this to Standing Committee on June 4th. The real reason around this is, as SOAR and we're moving forward, we are trying to put value on some of these properties. Even though they used to meet the demo criteria, they still may have a market, but before we could never get them to anybody because we didn't have the ability to acquire ownership. So new process directs non-emergency homes towards other options, like land bank donation before resorting to demolition as a last resort. Dangerous buildings are the same. In fact, Aaron's developed a process actually that probably those will be even coming down quicker because they're our priority, and we've got a new process that we work through legal work on, our 72-hour process. Those are the buildings that basically are collapsing, fire damage, things along that line that we can't come close to even securing properly to keep them safe. So those are automatically going into demo and going into priority status. Those that are tax sale eligible or not even tax sale eligible, or the ones that are tax sale are working towards the next tax sale. If they're not tax sale eligible, we're still referring those to DRE, which is communicating with Chris's office, and they're working on a communication to request a donation. If for some reason it falls between the cracks and doesn't meet any of that, it comes back to the SOAR committee to look at that property to find out if there's any other options before it's put back in demo. So this accomplishes a couple things for us. First of all, once again, we're looking at our properties as trying to have value. It's putting them into the market, which we've never really done before, whether it's through the tax sale process or going in the land bank and the contractors bid it to find out if there's any market interest. That helps us because a lot of those properties Aaron mentioned, that the 21 that were taken out of the demo process because they were in the environs or in the landmarks, they wanted us, not the planning commission, but the board or landmarks commission, I'm sorry, they were having a problem with us just raising properties. We were taking them to them, but they wanted to look at other options. What can we do? They actually kind of agreed and kind of come up and helped this process that if we put it through the tax sale, nobody buys it, or if it goes land bank and nobody bids on it, that satisfies their requirement that there's no market interest. So they're more willing to approve that process to go ahead and demolish. That's it.
All right, just one other item of note. For those of you who remember the Stony Point problems we had a little over a year ago, we are, as part of SOAR, also looking at tree management with BPU, trying to come up with a plan there. Got a little stalled out because of something called waste management, but we will be coming back to that. And I want to let you know that we are working on that, and we're working on it together because our urban forest is important to the appearance and safety of our community. Lastly, we did hire Logan to be our SOAR coordinator, and she wasn't thrilled with those other pictures, but we did throw her professional picture in here. We're very excited to have her on board, and she helps keep us all on our toes all the time. And what I want to do also here at the end is recognize something that I thought the mayor said, very apt, that describes SOAR quite well. We are working on the real problems facing our neighborhoods. And I want to give a big round of thanks to the commission for letting us do that for you to make this a better place. With that, I'm done.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. I just don't know if I can put into words the appreciation that I have for the team and the work and the data and the outcomes. I think I did put it into words. Thank you. You're welcome.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, thank you to everybody. I think Commissioner Bynum summed it up. The effect of this is something that we can all see, and you're working through a lot of problems that, you know, stalled out and prohibited us in the past from moving some of these properties on. I just want to make sure, though, that I understand from early in your presentation, this was something that came up in the early stages of this vacant registry. I was very concerned that we not have a system where we have a shopping list for people with less than good intent. So when you were explaining about availability of identifying or maybe accessing some of these properties deemed to be vacant, that's not public, is it?
I don't know.
Because that was the intent that I understood, that that would not be public. We didn't want a shopping list, so to speak, for people who, like I said, were less than ill intent.
Well, actually, right now, the vacant property registration itself on the mortgages and defaults, that is public. You can access those properties online. It does not give ownership name, but it does give property address and, I believe, the bank that's involved. Now, the private side, we've not worked through that yet. None of that's out there even for us to access yet. And that would be the ones that are meeting the definition of vacant, that aren't in default or in foreclosure.
Okay, tell me, so I get the private side. Okay, so tell me again, what is?
We can't even see the private side yet, and we haven't worked through the details of what that will be. We're only doing paper right now with them. On the foreclosure and the default side, as Melissa showed on that slide, you can actually find out if one is registered as vacant in your neighborhood. It does not give ownership, but it does give address, and it does give the bank that has it.
That's on the commercial side, or one that might be in foreclosure, you're saying? Yes. We're coming pretty close to something that we may need to reconsider, because again, this came up early on. We don't necessarily want a list that people in the neighborhood
I think
or out of
what
the
I was
neighborhood.
thinking it was you were able to check if it was registered, not see everything that was in your neighborhood. So I haven't gone on that part, so I'll look at it, Commissioner, if it's doing what you're saying. I don't want that either. It was more for me to go, I've got this problem property, I want to see if you guys know about it. That was what it was for. It wasn't a shopping, it's supposed to be a shopping list. So we'll have to see how that comes out. I know they have full access on their side, but what they see is different than probably what you or I should see. So let me check that out, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and we'll get back to you on that. Anything else?
Commissioner Markley?
Obviously, you all know I'm a huge fan of SOAR and of the work you guys are doing. I just really appreciate something that we haven't seen in the past is the level of interaction between departments and the teamwork that we see, not just in your presentation today, but in what you're doing every day. And not only is that obviously having an impact in the data that you're gathering and in the goals that you're trying to advance, but I feel like you have a lot more enthusiasm because you're working together and getting to know each other, and I hope you guys feel that way too. But we see you, I think, being much more enthusiastic about this project than you would have been 7 years ago when we said, tell us about demolition or tell us about vacant houses, and you're all kind of like, well, we got a lot of them, you know. So we feel that enthusiasm. I think the neighborhoods feel that enthusiasm when you come out and talk to them and present to them. And that's part of the reason that they're becoming engaged in this project. So I appreciate that. I hope it's making you guys have a better work environment as well. And I know our neighborhoods are seeing the impact of that. So I appreciate it.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor, and I hope I'm giving the concluding comments tonight.
So do we.
So I'll try to make it brief. First of all, thank you to all the departments that have presented tonight. You're doing an excellent job. I thought it was a novel concept that we would all work together as a team, and I think that we're seeing some changes that will be generational in their effects, so that our children will be able to be the real beneficiaries of the things that we're doing right now. As we're continuing to work together, and first of all, let me say, like, the Park Place project, I think, will be something that can be replicated throughout the metropolitan area, throughout the Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County area. So there's a lot of things to be learned, and hopefully we can share that as we go to other areas. As we're talking about a team concept, I would encourage you to make sure that you're keeping the commissioners involved and aware of changes and things that are happening, whether it be tax sales or improvements and things of that nature, so that we can be a part of that team process as well. We would love to make sure that we're present at some of these things as our schedule would permit, though these are told to us that we are doing a part-time job. I think most of us realize it's more than a part-time job, but we want to be part of that change as well. So please make sure that we're notified as you are doing things in our respective districts as well. So thank you again.
Yep, thank you.
Seeing no further comments, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.